welcome to Living Arts. I'm your host, Jackie Suarez. Thank you for tuning in. Tonight I'm very pleased to welcome Karen Marmer and Jörg Schwarz to the show. They are members of Rebel, a fabulous group we've seen. They are actually members of our little Peak Skill community here, and we're thrilled to have you on the show. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
It's been a long time coming, right? Because we've talked about this for a while. Yeah, so you guys, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about the instruments that I'm seeing here right now?
Well, you are seeing two violins, of course. Everybody has seen a violin. There's a little something special about it because, first of all, the two instruments are by the same maker.
Okay.
Jakob Steiner, German-Austrian maker, lived in the mid-17th century, and these two instruments, the left one is from 1660.
That's mine.
And that's the one that Karen plays exclusively. And the right one is from 1668, same maker. The other difference is that these are Baroque violins. That means they're violins that are in the setup as the setup of a violin was back in 1660.
Right.
It has, over the past 350 years, changed a little bit. They have metal strings. These are all plain gut strings. There are chin rests here usually, and then people have a shoulder rest underneath, and other things have been changed, so they sound quite different and to the eye look a little different usually because of the chin rest that we don't use because that's not what they did back then.
So how did you come to have these two?
I found, well, first of all, Steiner is probably the most sought after violin maker for early music, people like us playing music of the 17th and 18th century. And so when I was looking for a really good instrument, I was looking ideally for that violin maker. And I came across one at the Boston Early Music Festival back in 1995, I think it was, and fell in love with it, and the rest is history, as they say. The other violin we found about 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, at Christie's.
At Christie's auction.
Wow.
We were looking for a match to this one because it has a very specific overtone, rich sound, silvery sound, and a nice big low string bottom. And so we're looking for the match, and there it was.
It was very, very dirty. And I'm so glad it
good.
was, because I think there would have been a lot more interest in that violin
Indeed,
if it looked
indeed.
when
Yeah.
it was being shown.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, we're
So
really thrilled to have these two.
I could look through the dirt, so to speak, and and
He had X-ray vision.
and we bought it and then had it since it had been modernized, had to convert it back to Baroque condition, as we had done with this one previously, and now we have them together, and they match beautifully.
Yes.
Yeah,
Couldn't be better.
Very
Couldn't be
unique
better.
sound.
Siblings that have been reunited.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Karen, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your background?
Okay. Well, I'm originally from Queens, and I started on the piano actually, and only started violin when I was 12. And it was kind of an interesting, mysterious switch from piano to violin, because when I entered junior high school, we were all given an option to take up an orchestral instrument. And for some reason, I saw this violin in my mind's eye, and I said, I have to play the violin. It wasn't like I had been thinking about it before, but it was almost like a light bulb went off, and I I started taking lessons, and I really took to it, and I just absolutely love it and never looked back.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about how you began to play and how you guys got together.
Well, my father was a organist and piano teacher, so music was always in the house. And when I was really little, and I mean about 3 or 4 years old, there was one room that was off limits for me, and that was the room where my dad had the piano and where he was teaching. So all these other kids that took piano lessons, of course, always were allowed in there, in that room. It was actually a room without a window, so we called it the dark room.
Oh, okay.
And this is, of course, I have to say this is back in Germany, where I grew up, where I was born. And in any case, so I always wanted to be able to go into that room too, but I wasn't even really allowed. And so my daddy made a promise. He said, when you turn 6, you're going to get your first piano lesson. And on my 6th birthday, a few blue moons ago, I got my first piano lesson. That lasted for a few years, and then my other brothers had started. I have 3 older brothers, had started playing the cello, and the other one had played some viola, and another one flute and saxophone. And I said, I want to play something that you can carry around. You can't carry a piano, obviously. So I couldn't do the cello because I was too small. So they said, well, the small version of the cello, that's the violin, so you should try the violin. That was it. It was good enough for me, and I took to it really well, I have to say. And I started, I was about 8.5 or almost 9, I think, which is nowadays considered relatively late.
Okay.
But sometimes you can make up with extra practice and talent, maybe. And so
As
I
far
guess
as being a
so I
child
guess we
prodigy,
did,
right?
Well, I mean, child prodigy, that would have had to start in my mom's womb, you know.
Yeah.
These days, right? Anyway.
So you played before you got to, I guess in 1991 you formed the group,
Yeah.
the Ensemble. But prior to that, well, how did you guys meet?
Well, a lot of people think that we met over in Europe, but we actually
hold
didn't.
it.
What?
Hold it, because, you know, you wouldn't have met me ever if I hadn't come over here.
That's true.
Since I was born in Germany, let me just
we're in
fit
Germany.
that in.
That's true.
Down in South Germany, between Stuttgart and Heidelberg.
Okay.
Heidelberg had a big GI, American soldier base. And so did Stuttgart, and behind my house, about half a mile up the road, there was a helicopter landing
Oh, wow.
space for the GIs. Anyway, and when I started going professional, I went to music schools in Switzerland and in Germany. And then I wanted to finish off going to New York to study at Juilliard. Got myself some scholarships, came over in 1982, and that sort of set the scene for us eventually meeting.
So in 1986,
Shortly after.
yes, I met this young gentleman at a bad gig in New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
In Jersey,
I hope
yes.
the conductor is
Weirder
watching
things have
this.
happened.
Yes,
Was that
but
with,
no, don't mention any names.
No.
But anyway,
okay.
yes, and
I wanted to
I
mention
noticed
something
that I was sitting next to him, and he was telling the concertmaster how to play, and he wasn't the concertmaster, obviously. And I said to myself, this is kind of a feisty fellow. And you know, the next rehearsal day, I talked to him a little bit more, and kind of got very interested in getting to know him. And of course, he was into Baroque violin, and that's how I started Baroque violin, because first I fell in love with him, and then I fell in love with the Baroque violin. So the rest is history.
So I can say that I had a little influence on you?
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was actually the reason when we played some of that earlier music in that gig, why I supposedly told the concertmaster how to play, because it was sort of something that I knew a lot about, and he was more old-fashioned in that sense, and hadn't been licked by the muses of early music.
So you were trying to push him around when you got there?
And just sort of
Very nice
giving
to
some
help him.
hints and giving some ideas that maybe if we did
He was
this
very
and
polite.
that. And,
What distinguishes Baroque from different types of classical music? For something, and that may sound like a silly question, but
Well, you mean the music or the style of playing?
the style of playing.
The style of playing. It's a very simple thing, putting it in a nutshell. The instruments are set up differently. We have plain gut strings instead of metal strings, steel strings. That makes for a much warmer, rounder, fuller, richer sound. It's not as loud in terms of decibels, but it is a richer, rounder sound. And that means that you can use different tricks, so to speak, to be expressive. And one of the tricks that, as a modern player, what one does is to use a lot of different types of vibrato, to be in glissandos and being very expressive there. And with the bow is not so much. What we do on the early music scene is that we use very, very little vibrato. We do occasionally use it as an expression, but not constantly like our modern players, like I was trained when I started initially. And we really, as I say, speak with a bow, articulations, and do everything from the right hand from the bow rather than from the left hand. And that we know from treatises and books, and not recordings, of course, nothing no recordings much before 1900. But even there, we hear these musicians, Sarasate and Josef Joachim and others, play with hardly any vibrato. So this constant vibrato and that expressivity really comes in with the change to metal strings around 1920, let's say, 1920. And then metal strings give you a different sound, and then you have to warm it up with the vibrato, and then everything shifts around. And that is really the major difference, I think.
So has this always been your main focus, or was there another style of music that you were interested in playing?
Well, before I started playing Baroque violin, I was doing all kinds of things. I was playing jazz, I was playing bluegrass, I was playing contemporary music, I was playing, you know, the repertoire that we now play on these instruments, on modern instruments, and just doing a variety of things. I have to say that since I have been focusing on, I would not say Baroque violin, but period instrument playing, because Mozart is not a Baroque composer, but we do play, and that's considered classical, the classical period. The Baroque period, like Bach and Vivaldi, and classical like Mozart, Beethoven, and then later music. Ever since I started focusing on period instrument playing, I don't do quite the wide variety of things that I used to do, but just kind of when you focus on something more exclusively, you start noticing all the wonderful things, you know, aspects of that thing that you're focusing on. So it's very, very fascinating and wonderful world of exploration for me.
So now you have two other members of your ensemble.
At least two others.
At least two others?
Actually, the core formation is four, actually 5 people. We have John Moran, who is our cellist, and Dong-Suk Shin, who is our harpsichordist and organist and forte pianist. And our flute and recorder player, MATTHIAS MAUTE, who lives in Montreal. He is with us a lot. We've been playing with him ever since we formed our group in 1991. So that's the core formation, but we expand to orchestral proportions and everything in between. A lot of times, so for example, with the upcoming concerts, we'll be in a formation of 7 to 8 players, and even I'd say for the May 11th, it's slightly more than that, maybe 9 or 10. But yeah, so it's anywhere between 4 and 25.
Yeah, we on our CD recording is actually a CD box of 8 CDs with the complete masses by Joseph Haydn. That the largest formation there is over 32 players in a couple of the pieces.
So that's quite the
so
orchestra.
it's a real, what you would now call a real chamber orchestra with full section of wind players and everything.
When we play in that formation, we call ourselves Rebel Baroque Orchestra.
Because it's really,
yes.
It's really
but when it's just Rebel, then you know it's it's the streamlined version.
The chamber. the
chamber group.
So when did you decide? I'm assuming that both of you, once you got together, you decided to form the ensemble, but you were living in Europe at the time.
Right. Jörg and I moved to Amsterdam in 1990. I was studying Baroque violin in The Hague, and Jörg was freelancing with some very high-profile ensembles, and such as the Amsterdam Baroque Orchestra and Musica Antiqua Köln and other groups. And one day at school, a friend of mine showed me a little pamphlet and said, "Hey, Karen, did you see this? It's a competition for ensembles in early music. Do you think we should go for it? Because, you know, in school we had this little chamber group just for, you know, a chamber music class." And I thought to myself, I think I'd like to do this competition, but I think I want to do it with Jörg. At that time, we weren't married yet, and the first prize was 10,000 guilders, and we were kind of, you know, needing some extra cash. And
it was a
we
considerable
thought
amount of money back then.
it was a lot of money, and we thought to ourselves,
What was it, $1 for every, like, you know?
Right. What do we have to lose? We'd be working on some great repertoire. We'd have the motivation to really, you know, get it as good as we could. So we made a tape. So so we teamed up with 2 other people that we had met over there. Not the current formation, but these are 2 people from over there. And we made a tape. We got into the semifinals, and then we did the competition. And to everybody's astonishment, not the least of which was ours, We won first prize. And, you know, after that, all these concert offers started pouring in, and you know, we got all kinds of press and a big buzz about us. And so that's kind of how we started. Sort of, we really went for went for broke.
But you know, it was a great opportunity.
Yeah.
At the time, early music was going strongly, but there were a lot of opportunities back then.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you know,
Do you find that there's just more of an interest in classical music in Europe than there is here in the States?
that's a loaded question.
You should answer that because you're.
I think there's a lot of interest here, but there's one advantage over in Europe is that all that music basically is native European music.
Right.
And over here, there is a lot of other stuff. I mean, jazz being a typically native American created type of music. And of course, rock and all that kind of stuff. So classical music has been pushed a little bit onto the sidelines. And mostly so in schools and in people's homes. In my case, as I said, you know, I was exposed to it from the very beginning because all my brothers played instruments. My father was an organist. My mom didn't play an instrument, but she sang in the church choir. So there was music all the time. And all these kids that came in and took lessons with my dad, I constantly heard classical music, classical music. Everything was classical music. My parents would listen to classical music on the radio, later on LPs, of course. And, you know, so when you're exposed, then you will have a much greater likelihood that you like it or get into it. And so that, I think, is the major difference. I think there are lots of people who love it, but
They're just not exposed to it.
Not exposed, and I think they would like it much more than they think they would.
So many people who come to our concerts, maybe at the suggestion of a friend, or you know, they'll come and they'll say, "Wow, I never knew that I would love this music so much," and they want more. And so it's just kind of a matter of, you know, getting the word out and having people maybe take a risk. It's sort of like going to a restaurant and looking at a menu, and instead of you know, offering ordering the cheeseburger and and fries, you know, maybe get something else, and they might discover that they love something else, you know.
Well, you also, you know, I've seen you perform with Black Marble, and you told me a really cute story about the meaning behind that. Why don't you tell our audience how you came up with the name Black Marble?
Very simple. My name, Schwarz, in German means black, and Karen's name, Marmer, in Dutch means marble, so black. Marble.
And that's when the two of you are just playing together.
And that's just violin duos, just for the two of us. Great repertoire, by the way.
We say it's Rebel without the riffraff.
That's good.
I'm sure your other little bandmates like that, right?
Yeah, they like it. They think it's pretty funny, but probably they're not too amused. No, they think it's funny.
So what was going on? Once you started getting all these gigs and you were living in Europe for a little while, how long did you stay over there before you came back?
Well, we were there for a total of 2 years. We had initially wanted to see if we wanted to live there full time, I mean forever. We didn't think we liked it as much as we hoped.
Well, I was a little spoiled after having lived in New York, meaning in Manhattan, for almost 8 years. And Amsterdam is a wonderful city, but everything is very narrow and small. It's almost like a miniature version of New York City. And starting with apartments, space is, there's not much of it, you know. And I just had a really hard time, and you know, back then there were still these silly restrictions that you could not go shopping on Sundays, and on Saturday the shops would close at 5 p.m. and of course no overnight shopping possible. On Monday the shops would only open at 12 noon.
You mean like just regular food shops? Because my experience in Amsterdam was a little different.
Yeah, but food shops. But they changed all this. Now it's totally different, and of course restaurants or bars are open.
Right.
I don't want to say 24/7, but you know.
It's a fascinating place. It's an absolutely fascinating place. I mean, we're going to be actually visiting in June at the end of our Germany tour. We're going to go to Amsterdam and
days,
visit some
yeah.
friends. But we were there for 2 years, and we moved back because my parents needed my help.
Well,
And,
that was really the main
and we continued with the formation with the other two that we met over there for about 6 years. It kind of worked out in a way because both Jorg and I were playing with the Stuttgart Baroque Orchestra, and they were paying our transatlantic travel. But when that ended, we just had to reform the rest of our ensemble because every time we wanted to have a rehearsal, 2 people had to get on a plane.
Right,
So it was great for the airlines, but not very good for our wallets. So
Right,
It
exactly.
just got too much, and when we stopped playing for the Stuttgart Baroque Orchestra after about four years, I think, we had to find a solution because then now we didn't have 4 big projects every year with that Baroque orchestra and could sort of tack on our Rebel things. So it just naturally came to an end, and then we said, well, we're going to regroup over here, and that's the formation since 1997.
yeah, we've been with them for a very long time.
That has been consistent.
It's really a match made in heaven.
So who is, you've recently put out an album. Why don't you tell our audience about that? I hear it's got rave reviews and there's some Grammy talk.
Yes, we just got a rave review in Gramophone magazine, which is one of the biggest magazines for record review. And it's by featuring works by one of our favorite composers, Georg Philipp Telemann, who was one of perhaps J.S. Bach's most celebrated contemporary. And it's a disc of double concerti of diverse instruments. There are concerti for violin and trumpet, and there's a concerto for violin and flute, there's a concerto for 2 violins, there's a concerto for 2 flutes, there's a concerto for recorder and flute. So it's a very diverse program, and it's one of our favorite CDs, and we're really, really, really excited about how many great reviews we're getting and how much great feedback we're getting.
And it's
from
also
people.
a little bit of a larger formation compared to our other CDs. I think we are about 13 musicians on that.
Yeah.
On that CD.
So you also have 2 dates coming up. So why don't you tell our audience about where you'll be performing?
Well, why don't you talk about the May 4th with the West?
Okay, sure. We have a performance coming up on Sunday, May 4th in South Salem in the Presbyterian Church.
Okay.
That is Rebel in collaboration with the Westchester Oratory Society, a choir. And we are doing some instrumental pieces, but also 3 pieces by Haydn, Vivaldi, and Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, for choir and string ensemble. Actually, we have a trumpet and an oboe there as well. 2 trumpets and an oboe.
Okay, and then you'll also be performing in another Presbyterian church, this one in Bedford, on May 11th.
Yes, Sunday, May 11th, which is Mother's Day, and it's a concert that's it's our season finale. We have our own self-produced series in Bedford called Musica Antiqua Nova, and we do 3 concerts a year, and this is the 3rd of the 3 for this season. And this is going to be a collaboration with a viola-da gamba duo from Montreal called Les Voix Humaines, which is French for the human voices, and our recorder and flute virtuoso Matthias Mauthe, also from Montreal. And the name of the program is Human Voices, and it's going to feature works by J.S. Bach, Telemann, Vivaldi, Couperin, Marais, Saint-Colombe, and Buffardin. So a lot of well-known names and some lesser-known names. And it's going to be an amazing program, and we're going to have a special Mother's Day champagne reception after the concert where people can eat and drink and mingle with the artists. So it'll be really nice.
That's terrific. I'm going to try and catch either one of them or both. And just quickly give us your website because we've run out of time. So how they can get information about these performances and also how to get a hold of your CD.
Yes, absolutely. The website is www.rebelbaroque.com, REBELBAROQUE.com, and you can get information about how to purchase tickets for our May 4th or May 11th or both concerts, as well as how to purchase our CDs.
I want to thank you both for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing your instruments with us and your stories. It was wonderful having you here.
Thank you so much, Jackie.
Pleasure.
And to the Living Arts audience, we want to thank you for tuning in again. Hope you enjoyed the show. And don't forget to like us on Facebook and check out our YouTube channel. And we will be seeing you soon. Peace.